Why is it that sometimes you make a choice, and even with all your logic lined up neatly on the table, something inside whispers, "This isn't really your decision, not fully"? Why do we find ourselves saying, "I don't know why I did that," even when the consequences ripple through our lives like unseen tides pulling us in directions we never consciously picked? And maybe the real question is this: what if some of our most life-shaping decisions aren't made by the mind we think we control at all, but by the deeper mind, the one that speaks in symbols, dreams, impulses, and quiet inner nudges? Today, we're not just talking about choices. We're stepping into the hidden architecture behind your choices, the invisible blueprint beneath your everyday yes and no. Because as Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Think about that for a moment. How many of your paths, relationships, turns, hesitations were not mistakes or coincidences, but messages? How many times did you think you were lost, when in truth you were following an inner compass you didn't even know you had? Let's start at the root. Long before you formed your adult identity, before habits, careers, and personalities hardened into shape, your inner world was already being written by impressions, soft, silent, powerful. Jung called these early psychic imprints complexes, living clusters of emotion and memory that operate like constellations inside us. Sometimes, those constellations guide us gently. Sometimes, they drag us toward choices we later question. And sometimes, they protect us from paths we're not yet ready to walk. So when you say, "I don't know why I did that," maybe you do know, just not consciously. Maybe it wasn't confusion. Maybe it was an inner intelligence moving before your rational mind could catch up. In this journey, we're going to explore those forces, not harshly or critically, but with curiosity, softness, and courage. Because once you start to see the hidden hands shaping your life, something shifts. You stop blaming yourself. You stop fearing your impulses. You stop calling your mysteries mistakes. You begin to understand yourself. And that's where every real transformation begins. Let's go deeper. Because the unconscious doesn't move like a loud voice or a clear instruction. It moves like weather, like a shift in the wind you feel on your skin long before you see the clouds forming. And sometimes the hardest truth to accept is this: your unconscious is already making choices while your conscious mind is still debating them. Think about the last time you felt an inexplicable pull toward a person, a city, a project, or even a sudden ending. You might have explained it away with logic, but something inside you knew long before you could articulate it. Jung believed the psyche isn't random, it's purposeful. It's a living ecosystem guiding us toward growth, even through discomfort. As he once wrote, the psyche has its own secret intentions. Those intentions often rise through what Jung called the feeling tone complexes. They're not problems, they're more like gravitational fields. Invisible, powerful, and alive. A childhood emotional pattern can nudge you to avoid conflict without knowing why. A forgotten memory can draw you towards someone familiar, even if that familiarity brings pain. A buried longing can push you to say yes to an opportunity your rational mind considers risky. You may think you're simply acting on instinct, but instinct is often the voice of the unconscious wearing a thin mask. And here's the curious thing. These inner forces aren't trying to sabotage you. They're trying to complete an inner story. Jung believed that everything inside us is moving toward wholeness. Even the choices that confuse us, even the detours, even the moments that hurt, especially those. Sometimes your unconscious steers you away from a path because the version of you required to walk it hasn't yet been born. Other times it pushes you straight into an uncomfortable truth because avoiding it would stunt your growth. And sometimes it makes a decision for you, subtle, silent, swift, because it senses something your conscious mind is blind to. So the next time you find yourself saying, "I don't know why I chose this," imagine the deeper layers of you quietly answering, "I chose it because I am trying to lead you home." In the next part, we'll explore how these unconscious patterns take shape and why some choices feel eerily inevitable. To truly understand why your unconscious chooses for you, we have to trace the thread back to where these patterns were first woven. Not in adulthood, not even in adolescence, but much earlier, long before you had the words to describe what you felt. Because the unconscious doesn't begin as an abstract concept. It begins as experience, as sensation, as the emotional climate you grew up in. Jung often said that the psyche is born whole, but life carves it into pieces. These pieces, when pushed into the shadows, become the very forces that later guide your decisions without your awareness. And it's not because you're weak or unprepared. It's because the psyche remembers everything, even what you consciously forget. Think of the first time you sensed tension in a room without knowing why. The first moment someone's tone shaped your behavior. The first expectation you learned to meet, not because you wanted to, but because it made you feel safe. These early impressions form what Jung called autonomous complexes, little psychological organisms that act independently, like separate personalities living inside you. They step in during stress, choice, conflict, or uncertainty. They whisper, "Do this. Avoid that. Stay here. Don't go there." And you obey, not because you mean to, but because it feels familiar. Familiarity is powerful. It can feel like destiny. This is why you may find yourself repeating the same types of relationships, the same patterns with money or work, the same emotional responses, even when you know better. The unconscious isn't trying to trap you. It's trying to resolve something unfinished. As Carl Jung said, what we do not make conscious appears in our lives as fate. Each unresolved emotional thread from childhood becomes a loop your choices orbit around. Not because you're stuck, but because your psyche is asking for completion, for integration, for healing. Imagine your unconscious as a guardian carrying the memories you were too young to hold. It steps in with decisions not to confuse you, but to protect you. Sometimes too much, sometimes too little, but always with a purpose. The mistake isn't in having these patterns. The mistake is believing they are you. In the next part, we'll explore how the unconscious communicates, its language, its symbols, and the ways it tries to get your attention long before your mind understands what's happening. If the unconscious is shaping your choices, you might wonder, how does it actually communicate? Because it doesn't use the language of everyday thought. It doesn't argue, reason, or negotiate. It speaks in a far older, more symbolic tone, one that touches the soul before it reaches the mind. As Carl Jung often emphasized, the unconscious is not mute. We are simply not trained to hear it. And yet, it's always speaking. Sometimes it speaks through dreams, those strange, vivid landscapes that feel both nonsensical and deeply meaningful. A dream of running but not moving, a recurring symbol, a forgotten face returning from the depths of memory. Each one is a message coded in imagery, emotion, and sensation. Jung believed dreams are the psyche's way of trying to balance us, guide us, warn us, or prepare us for what the conscious mind refuses to see. Other times, the unconscious speaks through the body. A sudden tightening in the chest when you're about to say yes to something you don't truly want. A sense of heaviness around certain people. A strange lightness near others. Your body becomes the instrument through which the deeper layers of your psyche try to pull you back into alignment. And then there's intuition, that quiet, immediate knowing that doesn't come from logic yet feels undeniably true. Many people dismiss intuition as just a feeling, but Jung saw it as one of the 4 fundamental functions of the psyche. In his view, intuition is the way we perceive the invisible, the subtle, the emerging. It's the whisper of the unconscious before the conscious mind catches up. You've felt it before, haven't you? That small nudge saying, "Not this." Or that sudden clarity saying, "This is yours." And even if you tried to rationalize it away, something inside remains steady, waiting for you to trust it. The unconscious also communicates through synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that seem too precise to be random. A book falling open to the exact line you needed. A person calling at the moment you were thinking of them. A sign appearing when you were silently asking for guidance. Jung believed synchronicity is the psyche's way of bridging inner and outer worlds, aligning you with a path you didn't consciously choose but deeply need. These messages aren't loud. They don't shout. They ripple. They echo. They linger. And when you ignore them long enough, they intensify, not to punish you, but to redirect you. So the next time you feel conflicted, confused, or strangely pulled towards something you can't explain, remember this: your unconscious might already be speaking. Your only task is to learn how to listen. In the next part, we'll explore why some unconscious choices feel like self-sabotage and why, beneath the surface, they often aren't. Let's step into one of the most misunderstood territories of the inner world: the moments when your choices seem to work against you. When you walk away from something that looked ideal. When you stay in something that drains you. When you repeat a pattern you promised yourself you'd never touch again. From the outside, it may look like self-sabotage. From the inside, it feels like confusion, conflict, or even defeat. But what if it's none of those? What if your unconscious isn't trying to harm you at all? What if it's trying to protect something fragile inside you? Something you haven't yet fully understood. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious never acts without purpose. Even the patterns that hurt us hold meaning. He wrote, "The psyche is self-regulating," implying that every inner movement is an attempt to restore balance. Sometimes that balance requires slowing you down. Sometimes it requires shielding you from an experience you're not ready to integrate. And sometimes it requires repeating a painful pattern simply because healing can only occur when the wound is fully seen. Picture a part of you that learned very early that closeness meant unpredictability, that honesty led to rejection, that standing out brought discomfort, that being too visible felt unsafe. This part still lives inside you, carrying memories your conscious mind might no longer recall. When you make a decision today, that younger part may step forward and say, "Don't go there. Stay in what feels familiar. Familiar is safe." And suddenly, what looks like a bad decision from the outside is actually an inner defense mechanism doing its best to protect you. This is why Jung emphasized the importance of meeting the shadow with compassion. The shadow isn't the dark part of you, it's the unmet part, the guarded, hidden, unprocessed part. And it influences your choices precisely because it has remained unacknowledged. The psyche pushes you towards situations that mirror your shadow not to punish you, but to reveal what needs healing. When a decision feels irrational, ask yourself, which part of me is making this choice? The adult who knows what I want, or the child who learned what survival required? Neither is wrong. Both are trying to help. But only one is leading you toward your future. The other is trying to protect your past. Real change begins when you stop calling these internal movements mistakes and start seeing them as messages. Every repeated pattern is a signal. Every emotional trigger is a doorway. Every "I don't know why I did that" is an invitation to meet the part of you still waiting to be understood. In the next part, we'll explore how the unconscious uses relationships to reveal what the conscious mind cannot yet see. If you really want to see the unconscious in action, look at your relationships. Not just romantic ones, friendships, family dynamics, work connections, even brief encounters that leave you strangely moved or unsettled. These are the living mirrors through which your inner world becomes visible. Because as Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. It's in relationships that the unconscious reveals its deepest truths, not through words, but through reactions, through the pull you feel toward one person and the resistance you feel toward another, through the sudden spark of closeness or the inexplicable urge to run, through the patterns you repeat even when you know they don't serve you. Why does this happen? Because relationships activate your projections, the inner images, expectations, and wounds you unconsciously place onto others. Jung believed projection is not a flaw, it's a natural function of the psyche. When something inside you is unrecognized, you inevitably project it outward. You meet your own inner world wearing someone else's face. Think about the last time you felt instantly drawn to someone, as if you had known them forever. That sense of familiarity often isn't about them at all. It's about the inner figure Jung called the anima or animus, the internal archetype of the opposite energy within you. You're not just meeting a person. You're meeting an aspect of yourself reflected through them. The same happens with conflict. When someone triggers you, challenges you, or stirs emotional turbulence, it's rarely about their behavior alone. The intensity comes from what they awaken inside you. Your unhealed story, your forgotten fear, your longing, your unmet need. The unconscious selects people not randomly, but symbolically. It brings into your life the individuals who reflect exactly what you must face. This is why certain relationships feel inevitable, why some endings feel pre-written, why certain people seem to enter your life at the exact moment you're ready to confront something deeper. Jung saw this not as coincidence, but as psychological destiny. The unconscious uses relationships to help you evolve, to expose the parts of you that need integration, to awaken the qualities you've buried or denied, to guide you toward the person you're becoming. So when you find yourself saying, "I don't understand why I'm drawn to this person," or "I don't know why they affect me so strongly," it may be your unconscious responding, not to who they are, but to what they represent in your inner landscape. Relationships are not merely interactions. They are revelations. In the next part, we'll explore how the unconscious uses timing, delays, and unexpected detours to shape your path, even when it feels like nothing is happening. Have you ever noticed how some things in your life seem to happen too early, too late, or all at once? How an opportunity appears right when you were ready to give up? How a door closes abruptly, even though you were certain it should stay open? Or how something you've longed for finally arrives, but only after you've changed in a way you never expected? On the surface, it looks like coincidence. But from a Jungian perspective, timing is one of the unconscious mind's most elegant tools. Carl Jung believed that the psyche doesn't just shape our inner world, it subtly influences the sequence of events around us. Not magically, not as fate in the mystical sense, but through the way our inner state attracts, resists, delays, or prepares us for experiences. He often spoke of the unseen ordering of psychological life, a choreography between the inner and outer worlds. Think about the moments when life seems to pause, the stagnant phases, the quiet seasons where nothing moves, the waiting. Most people interpret these pauses as failure or stagnation. But what if they're actually preparation? What if your unconscious is slowing the outer world because something inside you isn't aligned yet, because a deeper readiness is still forming? Jung taught that the psyche protects its own unfolding. It won't allow you to step into certain chapters until the inner conditions match the outer opportunity. This is why some relationships don't begin until years after you first met. Why a lesson repeats until you finally understand its message. Why breakthroughs arrive only after breakdowns soften you enough to receive them. And then there are the sudden shifts, those moments when everything changes overnight. You wake up one day and something inside you has quietly rearranged itself. A decision becomes clear. A habit falls away. A truth you once feared becomes undeniable. These inner shifts often align with outer events that seem perfectly timed, even uncanny. This is not randomness. This is rhythm. The rhythm of a psyche guiding you toward growth, even when you think nothing is happening. When you say, "I don't know why this is happening now," the unconscious might be answering, because now you're ready. Ready to let go. Ready to begin. Ready to step into a chapter your past self could not yet carry. We often want control over timing, but timing, in many ways, belongs to the unconscious, the keeper of your deeper story. In the next part, we'll explore how the unconscious uses inner conflicts and emotional pulls in opposite directions to guide you toward clarity, not confusion. Have you ever felt torn between two choices, as if two different versions of you were pulling in opposite directions? One part wants to leap forward, the other hesitates. One part feels a rush of excitement, the other feels a quiet dread. You call it confusion. You call it indecision. You call it being stuck. But what if this inner tug-of-war isn't a flaw in your decision-making at all? What if it's communication? Carl Jung believed that inner conflict is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of dialogue between different layers of the psyche. He wrote, "Only through the tension of opposites does the energy for change arise." That means the very friction you're trying to escape might be the force shaping your evolution. Inside you, there are many voices, not in the chaotic sense, but in the psychological sense. Your conscious mind speaks the language of logic and plans. Your unconscious speaks the language of instinct, memory, and symbolic truth. When these two disagree, you feel it as conflict. But here's the important part. Both sides are trying to guide you. The part pulling you back may be trying to protect an old wound. The part pulling you forward may be trying to guide you toward your future self. Neither is wrong. Both are essential. Imagine it this way. One part of you carries the wisdom of experience. Another part carries the courage of possibility. And the unconscious uses the tension between them to create the energy needed for transformation. This is why decisions feel heavier when they involve old emotional patterns. The unconscious remembers what your mind has forgotten, moments when taking a risk hurt you, or when choosing yourself wasn't safe, or when standing out made you feel exposed. So it hesitates, not to sabotage you, but to avoid reliving a pain you haven't fully processed yet. At the same time, another part of you, the part shaped by growth, insight, and inner resilience, already senses where you need to go next. It pulls you forward with a gentle insistence, whispering that you're no longer who you once were. When you feel torn, it simply means these two parts haven't integrated yet. The solution isn't forcing yourself to choose quickly. It's listening to what each part is trying to tell you. Listening to the fear beneath the hesitation and the longing beneath the impulse. When you stop fighting the conflict and start decoding it, clarity emerges, not through pressure, but through understanding. Because conflict dissolves the moment both sides of you feel seen. In the next part, we'll explore how the unconscious uses symbols and strange coincidences to guide you toward decisions you're meant to make. There are moments in life when something small, a sentence overheard, a symbol that appears repeatedly, a sudden memory resurfacing, feels strangely meaningful. You might brush it off as coincidence. You might tell yourself you're overthinking. But deep down, something in you pauses. Something in you pays attention. Carl Jung believed these moments are not random at all. He called them symbolic expressions of the unconscious, the psyche reaching out through subtle hints and meaningful patterns. Jung wrote, "The symbol is the best possible expression for something unknown." In other words, your unconscious uses symbols when it cannot yet speak to you in direct language. Symbols are the oldest language of the human soul. Think of the moments when the same word appears everywhere. When you stumble upon the same book 3 different times. When a dream symbol repeats night after night. When a number, an image, a place, or even a person keeps resurfacing in ways you can't explain. The unconscious is saying, "Look here, there's something you're ready to understand." And then there are synchronicities, those uncanny events that align with your inner state so precisely it feels like the world is whispering to you. A thought you've been afraid to admit appears suddenly in a conversation with a stranger. A solution arrives in the form of an unexpected encounter. A question in your heart is answered by something you stumble upon by chance. These are not instructions from outside. They are reflections from within. The unconscious uses the outer world as a canvas, painting hints in places your logical mind would normally overlook. not to manipulate your choices, but to illuminate them, to guide you toward decisions aligned with your deeper truth, to remind you that you're not wandering blindly, even when it feels that way. And here's the quiet beauty of it. You don't have to force yourself to decode every symbol. You don't have to obsess over meaning. You simply have to notice. Because when a symbol matters, it lingers. When a message is meant for you, it repeats. When your unconscious is guiding you, you feel it, not as fear, but as resonance. The world around you becomes a mirror, reflecting your inner evolution. Choices that once felt confusing begin to feel illuminated from below, like something inside you is casting light upward. In the next part, the final part, we will bring everything together and explore how to work with these inner forces consciously, so your choices no longer feel mysterious or accidental, but aligned with the deeper story of who you are becoming. So here we are, at the end of this journey, yet really at the beginning of another. Because now you've glimpsed what most people never slowed down enough to see. The inner forces shaping your choices, the hidden architecture beneath your "I don't know why," and the quiet intelligence guiding you even when you feel lost. And maybe now you understand that your unconscious was never your enemy. It was your companion, your teacher, your oldest protector. As Carl Jung said, the reason for evil in the world is that people are not able to tell their stories. And what is the unconscious, if not the part of your story you haven't learned to listen to yet? Not the darkness you fear, but the depth you've forgotten. Your choices, those strange impulses, those sudden shifts, those paths that felt inevitable, were never signs of chaos. They were signs of communication. Your psyche has been speaking to you all along, in symbols and timing, in dreams and tensions, in echoes of emotion carried from long ago. And now that you've seen it, something inside you softens. Something inside you opens. Because once you realize you're not lost, you begin to walk differently. Instead of fighting your inner hesitations, you ask them what they fear. Instead of dismissing your intuitive nudges, you follow them with curiosity. Instead of judging your patterns, you trace them back to their origins and meet the younger part of you that learned them. You begin to move through life not from battle, but from partnership with yourself. And slowly, something beautiful happens. The unconscious stops pushing. It starts collaborating. It stops shouting in symbols. It begins whispering in clarity. It stops steering you through conflict. It starts guiding you through alignment. Your choices become less about avoiding pain and more about seeking truth. Less about repeating the past and more about creating the future. You stop feeling like your life is happening to you and start sensing that it's happening with you. This is what Jung meant by individuation. The moment you become whole, not by controlling every inner force, but by acknowledging them, by integrating them, by walking with all the parts of yourself instead of hiding from them. And maybe, just maybe, the next time you feel a pull you can't explain, you won't say, "I don't know why." You'll say, "Something deeper is speaking. Let me listen." If this journey resonated with you, if it stirred something quiet and ancient within, stay close. There is so much more to explore, more depth, more clarity, more truth waiting beneath the surface of your everyday life. And I'll be here for the next step.